Welcome to the third chapter of the book of 1 Samuel. God speaks to Samuel. So now the little boy has been taken to Eli the Priest, where the tabernacle was in Shiloh, and is growing up. Exactly how old he was when he first arrived at the tabernacle, we can only guess. But now he's old enough that he's walking and talking. It says, and the boy, but he's still a boy, Padarion, Samuel, was officiating to the Lord before Eli. So that means he was helping, doing things in the temple, Eli the priest. And the word of the Lord was esteemed in those days. That means that, and from what I see, we go down and it shows in that was rare. It was esteemed. It was something rare in those days. A little bit different meaning, but there was not a vision for giving orders. So this was right after the last of the judges, and Samuel is the beginning of a new era. No judges, but he was a prophet. And it came to pass in that day, and I suppose you could call him a priest also, and it came to pass in that day that Eli slept in his own place, topography, and his ophthalmologist began to be darkened. That means he couldn't see very well, and he was not able to see. Darkened because no light going into the eye. And the lamp of God was before its being extinguished. And Samuel slept in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was. So I'm not exactly, the lamp of God was before it was being extinguished. I would imagine this would be at nighttime. So Samuel slept in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was, and that was the area that they had the tent that went around, and this was the inner part of that compound, and where the ark of God was. That's pretty amazing that he would be there. Now, whether he was in the Holy of Holies or the outer part, it doesn't say. And the Lord called, Kyrios called, saying, Samuel, Samuel. And he said, behold, it is I. Reminds me of when Peter was awoken by the angel rousing him up. Get up, Peter, get up. And so Samuel is aroused, and he said, it's I. And he ran to Eli and said, well, behold, it's I, for you called me. And Eli said, I have not called you. Return and sleep. And he returned and slept. And the Lord added again, Kyrios added again to call Samuel. And he went to Eli the second time. Deuteronomy comes from that, the second law, the second book of the Bible. And said, behold, it's I, for you called me. And Eli said, I have not called you, child. Return and sleep. And it was before Samuel knew God, and before the revealing the word of the Lord to him. So he knew how to work in the tabernacle and do his job, but apparently he wasn't taught too much about the laws, and this is I'm gathering of what it's talking about here, the revealing the word of the Lord, and the laws were about all they had, and so he was not understanding all that, young boy. And the Lord added again to call Samuel in a third time. Treto, I should have highlighted that for the try, 3. And Samuel rose up and went to Eli. And he said, behold, it's I, for you have called me. And Eli discerned that Kyrios has called the boy. And Eli said to Samuel, well, return and sleep, child, and it will be if he should call you that you shall say, Speak, O Lord, for your bondman hears. In the imperative, Speak, O Lord, for your bondman hears. And Samuel went to bed in his place, topo again. And the Lord came and stood and called him as once before and once before that. Samuel, Samuel. So now we have a theophany. It's called a theophany, where God appears in a human form of some sort because he stood. And God has taken the human form in other places. He wrestled with Jacob and Manoah. The parents of Samson saw him, and so forth. And he appears again, and finally in the person of Jesus Christ. And so he said, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, Well, speak, O Lord, Kyrie, for your bondman hears. Boy, that was good advice that Eli gave to Samuel. And Samuel yelled it out loud and clear. Speak, O Lord, your bondman hears. And oh, that we as bondmen and bondwomen of the Lord Jesus Christ would hear. Speak, O Lord, your bondmen or bondwomen hear. And how do we hear? I believe we hear through the word that we're reading right here, being in the word daily as much as possible. And God will speak to us, and we should be willing to hear. Now, if we don't want to listen to God, and we want to be an Eli, we can. It's our choice. But Eli chose the bad rather than the good, and it turned out bad for him and his future inheritance. And the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I perform, now here we have 4160, to do, pieo, to do, I peo, perform, or I do my words, I like perform, and this word, whenever I mention 4160 appears, it depends on the context. If it's a sacrifice, and to sacrifice, I sacrifice, or do, perform, all kinds of different possibilities depending on the surrounding words. I perform my words in Israel, so that all, hearing them, it shall sound in both of his ears. Ota, you can add that to your English derivatives book, otology, or otolith, which is an ear bone of a fish, or I guess even humans. In that day, I rouse up against Eli as many things as I spoke against his house with the man that came earlier. I will begin and I will complete. And I have announced to him that I punish. So the clergy, here we have Eli, and there is no escaping God's punishment. If the clergy does evil, then punishment will be meted out to them, hopefully. But, well, maybe not hopefully, but righteously by God. And then they will cease doing what they're doing by the punishment of God. But if they're doing things that are bad, and then you have the ones above them not doing anything, like in this case here, it says, and I have announced to him that I punish. He's punishing because of the evil that Eli's sons were doing, not Eli. Even I, his house, unto the eon in the iniquities of his sons, in which he knew that his sons were speaking evil of God, and he did not admonish them. Right now in the Roman Catholic Church, hierarchy is getting a lot of flack because of the abuse of the clergy of the priesthood with boys and so forth, and not in finding out about it, just as Eli did, but not doing anything about it. And then finally, people have realized that even the higher-ups are not doing anything about it. And so they have went to the civil authorities and doing searching and finding out that these were true, and basically the church trying to cover them up as much as they can. That's not good. And I believe that whoever is doing this covering up will be the ones that will be punished, and the ones that are around will also feel that punishment, even though they may not have been doing anything bad. And it continues in 14, and have I not thus sworn by an oath to the house of Eli? And it's saying, shall the iniquity of the house of Eli be atoned by incense or by sacrifices into the eon? And the question mark. Now here we see a 1487E. E generally requires a negative answer whenever you see it. It's a question, but it answers in the no. I did put, I think, in the first edition, no after there, but I hated doing that because it really didn't say no, and sort of an editorializing on my part, so I took them out. But here I'm showing you that this is a no answer, is to be expected with E. Shall, but not always, but shall the iniquity of the house of Eli be atoned? Is it something going to cover them up by incense? They're doing these things, or if a Roman Catholic priest by his Mass, or is he going to be covered up by his actions of listening to people's confessions and so forth? No. Into the eon, no. That's not going to cover him up. And Samuel went to, and I don't mean to want to just choose the Roman Catholic Church. I'm sure there are problems in a lot of other ones, and I do bring them up at times and tell the event, whatever. But here, I just thought that would be more appropriate, relevant maybe. And Samuel went to bed until the morning. And he rose up early in the morning and opened the doors of the house of the Lord. So apparently that was his job, to get up early and open the doors of that. Now, whether it actually had doors or there was actually like curtains, I'm not sure. And Samuel feared phovithi, the phobe. Whenever you see the phobe, phi omicron vita, then it has to do with fear in the past tense, feared. To report, and there the alpha, gamma, gamma, where it's something to do with speech, and here it's a report, apaga, gelime, angel, angelos, comes from that, a messenger. Samuel feared to report the vision to Eli. He didn't say anything, and he was afraid, a little kid. And here's this man, and he's big. It says he's overweight, so he was probably somebody to be afraid of. Now, whether Eli mistreated him at all or not, it doesn't say. Might have been a great person for Samuel. And Eli said to Samuel, Samuel, child. And he said, Behold, it's I. And Eli said, What was the word being spoken to you? Do not indeed hide them from me. Thus God do to you, and thus add to it if you should hide from me the word. 29:28, crypsis, a crypt, something hidden, cryptology. So if you don't tell me, whatever happens, whatever that word was, may it happen to you. And Samuel reported, there's again the apangilum, to him all the words, and hid not a crypsin from him, didn't tell him everything. And Eli said, Kyrios himself will do the good thing before him. So now see here is to do. And Samuel was magnified, and the Lord was with him, and there fell not from all of his words upon the ground. Everything that God said would coming to pass. I mentioned the last time with Ahimelech and Abimelech, the priests in the line of Eli coming to an end. A little bit later here, a couple of generations. And all Israel knew from Dan, which is further north, unto Beersheba down south, that Samuel was trustworthy for prophet to the Lord. Now, previous to this, we had the first prophet was Moses. It mentions him as being a prophet. I can't think of any prophets before Moses. I believe he was the first one. So now the prophets continued, and but in between we had a few other institutions of leadership, and that after Moses was priesthood of Aaron. The priest came from the tribe of came from Aaron, his three sons, Kohath, Gershon, and Kohath, Gershon, Merari. Then the Levites, the tribe of the Levites, they were made special to serve the people in a prophetic way, or in a ecclesiastical way, rather. It's a better word. So therefore we had the priesthood of Aaron, the Levites, the prophet, and then next came Joshua. And Joshua doesn't fit the mold, not as a prophet, nor as a later we'll see as a judge. He was started off being a spy, a young man, and then he was all for going in, taking the land, where all the other people talked Moses out of going, or not Moses, but the people from going into the land. So then he became the right-hand man to Moses. And then when Moses died, Joshua became like a general, a conqueror, went in and conquered the land of Canaan with the armies of the Lord, of the people, of the Jews. And then after that we go into the Judges, the book of Judges, with Gideon, Samson, Deborah, and many other judges. Then comes the prophets. Again here we have one prophet now that is basically the leader of the people in a theocracy, a government run by a man of God, much as the country of Iran is run by the Muslim clergy. Israel was run by Samuel, who was of the clergy. And so that was this for a short period of time, because after this we go into later in the chapter where the people want a king. So then we have the kingdom until the time of people taken away. For a short time we have 200 or 300 years. People, the priesthood comes back, the scribes and the Pharisees, and the priesthood until the time of Jesus. And then the king, King Herod, is instituted, who wasn't really a Jew. And I'm sorry, then I missed all the other kings before Ezra and Nehemiah, before Babylon, with the kings, from David all the way down to the last king. I forgot his name. And then today we have Israel back again, and we have, I guess he's the prime minister, it's called. So Samuel now is the prophet, and that's interim. And the Lord added again to manifest in Shiloh, for the Lord was revealed to Samuel in Shiloh according to the word of the Lord. So Samuel now is having a revelation of who Kyrios is and the things that he is to do and not to do. So we'll continue now, find out what happens after this. Samuel, after Eli hearing what's going to happen, his two sons were going to be killed in the prophecy in the second chapter and so forth. So now we'll find out in chapter 4 what happens next. And I hope you'll join us in chapter 4. It gets very interesting. And until then, well, God bless.